we didn't really forget what we started to learn yesterday, we'll take a couple of minutes and kind of have a little bit of a replay, okay? Yesterday, our big job was to try to figure out, first off, decimals and the places and what they're called in what I call decimal. All right? So yesterday, we were introduced to 3 of those places. And I want to make sure that you haven't forgotten that. So let's do a little practice. I'm going to put a number on the board, and I want you to write the name of the place under or above each of the digits. So here's my number. 74.263. Write the name of the place that each of those digits is sitting in. Now, the stuff on the whole number side, the 7 and the 4, all this stuff over here, that's what we did in chapter 1. So you should know the name of 4's place and the name of 7's place. The stuff on the opposite side that I call decimal land, this stuff is the new material. So I want you to give me the name of the place that those things are sitting. And I'm only going to give you about a minute to do it. Okay, let's start with what we should know. Sophie, give me the places of the 4 and the 7.
The 4 is the 1. And the 7 is the 10.
Good. And I could keep going, right? Like if I had more digits on that side, I could keep going listing their places. But what about in decimal land? Tessa, give me the place that the 2 is sitting in decimal land.
The 10th.
Good. It's the 10th place. And so yesterday we discovered there is no once place. And if you want to kind of imagine that the decimal is like the once place and then the spot right after it is the 10th place, I know that's confusing because in whole number land, the first number is the ones place. But in decimal land, the first number is the 10th place. It has the THS at the back. What about the 6? Max, what's the 6?
The 100th.
That's the 100th place. And the last one that I put up here, Olivia, is the 3. What's it?
The 1000th.
That's the 1000th place. I could keep going on this side also, but we just don't. In math, because the decimal side of the things talks about how small things get, we just don't go as like small into like the millionths place. Is there such a place that exists as a millionth place? Would there be a place like that?
No.
Yes, there would. If I kept adding digits all the way down here, I eventually would get to the millionth place. But we don't do that. But there is a place that exists that's called that.
But we're not going to go.
But we don't do it. The farthest we might go would be 1 extra digit. But normally we won't even go that far. But if I did go 1 extra digit, Brayden, what would that place be called? That would be the 10,000th place. But that is literally as far as we would go. We wouldn't go any further than that. So we spent time yesterday just exploring these places and their names and also like the size. So yesterday we learned that over here on this side, in whole number land, as I move away from the decimal, what starts to happen to the value of those numbers? Brody?
The numbers get bigger.
They get bigger. Not the actual number. Like, I'm not saying that if this was a 2 over here, it's not that it's a 2 or a 4 or 7. It's where it's sitting. 4 in the ones place is smaller than 7 in the tens place. And if I put an extra digit over here like a 2, the 2 would be bigger than the 7 and the 4 because it's in the hundreds place. So as we move away from the decimal in whole number land, things get bigger. But the opposite happens in decimal land. As I move away from the decimal in decimal land, what happens, Cassidy, to the numbers? They get smaller. Now, that's important for you to understand that. Do you have to have that in your notes? You should somewhere. Because that's stuff that you must know. And every single one of you learns your own way. So if we get to doing things like what we're getting ready to do here in a minute, where we have to turn a number into a decimal or turn a number into a fraction, if having this as something that you can look at for help helps you to find the answer, then I would have that somewhere on my paper. Like if I was taking a test over this stuff, and I'm a visual learner, everybody's a different kind of learner. Visual learners are learners that they need to see it to learn it. So if you're one of those kind of learners, you might want to put this on your test. You might want to write out, just make up a number like I did. And under each number, you write the place's name. So that you see 2 spots away from the decimal is the hundredths place. 4 spots away from the decimal is the 10,000ths place. So if that helps you, then you should have that somewhere where you can look at it. If you already understand that, maybe you don't need it. Okay? All right, so that was the first thing that we came across. Any questions on that, or do we feel pretty good with those 4 places in decimal land? What?
I have a question about decimals. Are you able to add decimals?
Yes, and we will get to that. But let's stick with what we're learning right now. Some of you are trying to jump really far ahead. That's stuff because I think you're ready and you're excited and you kind of want to learn this bigger stuff. But it all kind of has to happen in pieces. So we're not ready for that just yet. But yes, we will. Okay? All right. So let's move on to then what we came across yesterday after we kind of learned about names of places. We then learned that sometimes they will give us a word in word form, or number in word form. Kind of like in the examples here. And I think we practiced these examples yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah.
And so your job was to take the words that were written and turn it into a number. So let's make sure you didn't forget how to do that. Okay? All right, I'm going to give you some to try. I'm going to write 3 different problems up here on the board. I want you to practice them at your spot, okay? The first problem are these words. Do you have to write these words? No. You're turning this into standard form. That's your first one. Turn those words into a number in standard form. All right, hand on your head if you're done with all three. All right, we'll wait about 30 more seconds.
Wait.
Okay, time. If you're still working, keep working, or take a little break and let's look up here and see how we were able to quickly solve these questions. So, okay. So the first thing you have to do for number one, please stop. The first thing you have to do for number one is make sure that you can read what number one says in words. What does number one say in words, Lily? 203,000. So the first thing your brain should be telling you is you have to take the words 203 and turn it into a number. Lily, what does 203 look like as a number? If I was going to write the number 203, what would it look like? 203. But now figure out where's my decimal going to go. So if we jump back to this first page, the thousandths place is how many spots away from the decimal. Lily, how many spots away is the thousandths place? 3 spots. So now, jumping back to this question, 3 needs to be in the thousandths place. So where's my decimal going to go? In front of the 2. So number 1, as a number, looks like decimal 203. What does number 2 look like? Addison, read that one out loud to me.
5 16,000.
All right, so this I see the word and. Did anybody else notice that word and?
Yes.
And means there's going to be a whole number and a decimal. So what's it going to look like, Addison?
5.016.
Beautiful. Why'd you have to put a 0 in there, Addison?
Because since the 16,000th, the 6 needs to be the very last number in the problem in the thousandths place, and you need to have 3 numbers before the decimal, so the zeros fills in that spot.
Excellent. She knows that the thousandths place is 3 spots away from the decimal, and the number 16 only has 2 digits. So that meant she had to fill in a 0 in that empty spot. Okay. Number 3. Sophia, number 3.
The word part is 26 and 900.
Good. So what's it look like?
So, let's write it's 26,
Mm-hmm.
decimal, 0, 9. And that is 26
Perfect.
and 900.
And you can check it because when you look at the number that you wrote and you ask yourself, all right, say that number's name. Does that number's name match the word that you see? 26 and 900. Does that match the words? Yes, so we wrote it correctly. Questions on this stuff? This was yesterday's lesson for the most part. Learning how to take a number that was written in words and turn it into a decimal. Yes?
For number 1, couldn't it be decimal 0?
Okay, so if we're just gonna kind of write your thoughts over here to the side. She said, could it be decimal 023? Is that what you said? Okay, well remember, whatever the words say is what the number has to be. What number do you see right there? Huh? 23. Is that the words that are up there? So see, when you move those digits around, you change the number. So it has to say 203. And so when you move those digits around, it no longer is 203. Now it's 23. So can we do that? No, we can't do that. That messes up the number. So you have to keep it as it says, 203, which is what this is, and then your decimal goes in the front, so, okay? All right. Any other questions, or are we kind of ready to kind of turn that up a little bit? What?
Well, I just had a question, but it's a comment. I think an important note we should have in our notebooks is what and means in decimals, since I've forgotten it a few times.
So you forgot that decimal means and?
Yeah, so I remember.
Okay, that's good, yeah. So she's just kind of her own self. If it's something that you kind of keep forgetting, that the decimal means the word and, add that to your notes, because that's what she did, okay? All right, so now let's look, well, what happens if we reverse this, all right? What happens if instead of having words, instead, I give you a decimal? And I want you to turn this decimal into a fraction, okay? So let's try this. All right, so for number 1, let's just try decimal 27. All right, so that's my decimal, and your job is to turn this thing into a fraction. Now this sounds harder and scarier than what it really is, but remember, however you say this number is how you would write it as a fraction. So the first thing I have to know is, what is this number's name? How would I say this thing? Xander, how would I say it?
You would say 27 hundredths.
27 hundredths. Do you see how place value in decimal land is so important? He wouldn't have even known this number's name if he didn't know that 2 spots away from the decimal was the hundredths place. So that was important. So he knows this number is called 27 hundredths. So now he's going to put it into a fraction. What's it going to look like as a fraction, Xander?
So it would be 27, and then you'd have a line, and then it's 100.
And underneath at the bottom is 100.
It's 2700.
That's right. So the fraction has the same name as the decimal, 2700. So all I did was take the number that I saw over here and made it the top number of my fraction. What do I call the top number of a fraction? This is just kind of bonus information. We'll get to this later. Yeah?
Isn't it called the nom?
Oh, you're so close. The numerator. You're close. It's called a numerator. The top number is a numerator. So in a decimal situation, you take the number that you see in the decimal land, and that becomes your numerator of your fraction. What's the bottom number called, Brody?
Denominator.
That's the denominator. And the denominator, Brody, is what? How do we know what that is, though? The number that we always put at the denominator is the place. You got it. All right, try another one. Ready? Here we go. What about that one? Remember, your numerator is the number that's in the decimal. Focus. The numerator is the number that's in the decimal. So on those here, what number do you see in the decimal? Look over here. Can you see this, or is it too far away?
Yeah.
You can see it? Okay. What number, if I wrote 016, what number do you see? What number? 16. Just because there's a 0 in front of it, it doesn't change it. It's still 16. Okay? So that number is 16. 16 becomes my numerator of my fraction. The bottom number, Connor, becomes the place. So the place is where that 16 is sitting. Where is this 6 sitting? What place? What place is 3 spots away from the decimal? The thousandth place. So that means my denominator is going to become the number 1000. That's how I write it as a fraction. The top number is the number that I see. Bottom number is the place that it's sitting. Does that make sense? A little. We're getting there. Okay, let's try one more. All right, here we go. Oops, wrong color. This time I'm gonna give you a whole number to go with it, okay? Here we go.
Yes.
5 decimal 2 2. 5.22. What does that look like as a fraction? So just do what we know first. We know that the number in decimal land is gonna be my numerator, right? So Connor Lettieri, what's my numerator gonna be? 22. My bottom number is gonna be the place that the last digit is sitting. The last digit is sitting in what place? It's only 2 spots away. 2 spots away is not the thousands, it's the hundredths. So the bottom number is gonna be, if it's called hundredths, what number do you hear in the word hundred? 100, yeah. So there's your fraction. But what about this little 5 guy? Where's he gonna go? He's gonna go right next to it. And I'm gonna make him a little bit big because he's a whole number. He's a big whole thing. Okay. All right. So tonight your homework assignment is to complete. I think we're page 17, 18. I don't even know. I gotta look at my book. I know. See, classes go by so fast with these. Thank you, Sophia.